Hey, warmer for the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Soups with myself, Greg Oops Peterson, now part of the VSiP family of podcasts. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be in segment number 1, just refreshing you guys as to what all conference realignment changes we have for this upcoming college basketball season. I actually think that this is quite important because even I have gotten tripped up on what conference some of these teams are in because I did the Horizon League Conference preview yesterday. I don't think there's a lot of people that know that Northern Illinois is now in the Horizon League. Like I did my Big Sky Conference preview a few weeks ago. I still thought that Sacramento State was in there. So you're at Sacramento State for both the Big Sky and the Big West Conference preview. So we're going to be just refreshing you guys there. And then in segment number 2, we did see a little bit of a piece of news in college basketball with Milo Petrovic deciding that he is going to be heading on over to Seton Hall, a guy that was a part of Illinois last season. We're going to take a look at some of these international men of mystery, how that might be going for some of these teams. So we'll give you guys a nice little lowdown there. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we'll fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, Larsium, name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And I do beg with you, I do plead with you, please do send in these Twitter/X questions. Helps the off-season go by a little bit faster and helps me know what you guys want to hear on this podcast because you're getting a little bit of everything. I want this to be the greatest upcoming college basketball season ever. That's why you're going to be getting a specialized conference preview for all these conferences, and right gotten, I believe, 7 or 8. We're already through the Horizon League, so we're doing well there. And then once we get in season, obviously you get the picks and analysis on every single game, every single day. But some of these conferences, they are going to be looking a little bit different this year. And before I go any further, shout out to Mid-Major Madness. We've had a lot of our good friends on there over the last few days, but they put out this list to keep us all straight with regards to conference realignment, and I've been talking about some of these new look conferences here over the last few weeks, but if you're wondering about the United Conference, that is going to be many of the teams from the Atlantic Sun, West Georgia, North Alabama, Eastern Kentucky, Central Arkansas, and Austin Peay. And then that conference is completed by the teams that come over from the WAC. Abilene Christian, Tarleton State, and UT Arlington, because the WAC, that is a thing of the past. They got one added member with Little Rock coming on over from the Ohio Valley. And if you've been listening to this conference, I really do think that this Little Rock team is going to be the real deal. Then you got a few hodgepodge teams, like I mentioned it with regards to Northern Illinois. They joined the Horizon League from the MAC. That's just a little bit of a one-off move. The other big conference is obviously the Pac-12. And for those that are trying to keep the Pac-12 and the Mountain West straight right now, boy, I'm one of those people as well, because for the Pac-12, you get a lot of those WCC teams, Washington State and Oregon State. They were the original Pac-12 schools and were just there for a short time, not a good time, along with Gonzaga. And then you bring in about half the Mountain West: Boise State, Fresno State, Utah State, Colorado State, and San Diego State. And then Texas State is the team that rounds it out, as the Sun Belt did take a few losses. As for the Sun Belt, they lose Texas State, but then they also gained Louisiana Tech, who I did my Conference USA preview a few days ago, and I was thinking I was going to be preparing Louisiana Tech for that, but no longer. They are now in the Sun Belt. And then with regards to Big Sky, we've seen a few movers and shakers there as well. The Utah schools from the WAC, they go over there, Southern Utah along with Utah Tech. And then with regards to the WCC, they also added a member because they lose a few. They bring in Denver from the Summit League, and with the Atlantic Sun, they lost quite a few members as well, so they had to bring in Division II West Florida to make sure that they had enough schools. In a few more one-off moves, you had like Sacramento State head on over to the Big West. That was one that I had a problem keeping straight because I forgot that was a little bit more of a football move, and many of these moves are made for football. Like with Utah Tech, they were in the OVC the last few seasons. They're now over there in the SoCon, so that's another one that I'm going to need to be keeping straight, and I think that we covered all of them aside from the teams going to the Mountain West from the Big West / Conference USA: UTEP, UC Davis, Hawaii. They now head on over to the Mountain West because they lost so many teams to the Pac-12, so if you're having a tough time keeping things straight, don't worry, so am I, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens with regards to a lot of these moves, because the good news is, with these new conferences, with realignment, a lot of it is going to make things a little bit more friendly with regards to the travel. Like Sacramento State, they're in a Big West where pretty much every team aside from Utah Valley, which I forgot they're also now in the Big West along Cal Baptist from the WAC, but Utah Valley is the only team outside the state of California that is now in the Big West, so that helps out the Pac-12. It's going to be a little bit spread out because you've got Texas State in there, but since Texas State, that's a pretty regional conference as well. Now with the United Conference, that is going to be a little bit of a mismatch because you do have teams out there in the southeast part of the country, and then you bring in the Texas schools, so that's going to be a little bit convoluted. Little Rock, they're a little bit out there as well, but I do think that this is going to be very much helping with regards to a lot of the just travel, because obviously in the power conferences, you got some teams that are having to travel 2,500 plus miles. Like when Rutgers has to go to UCLA and vice versa, that is quite a trek. But I mean, we have seen a lot of realignment. We've got 2 new conferences in college basketball. I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a refresher on that, because I've had a tough time being able to keep these straight. Even the most passionate college basketball fans, even the most passionate football fans are having a little bit of difficulty there. And with football, it becomes a little bit more, shall we say, obscure, because you do have teams like Georgetown and company that they're part of the Big East, and then they're in like the Patriot League. So hopefully this was a nice little bit of a segment for you, just a way to be able to get to know these teams a little bit better. And coming up next, let's take a look at some of these international men of mystery right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Inside Edge this college basketball season, well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word.com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN, because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is very much a wild time in college basketball. No guests today because we had the 4th of July, and we got to give some of our guests a little bit of a break here, but don't worry, you're going to be getting great guests all throughout the offseason, because I want to do everything possible to make this the greatest college basketball season ever. But that said, something that I've been noticing a little bit about, because the transfer portal at this point, it's pretty much dead. We are not seeing a lot of guys transferring from school to school, but what we do have is a lot of these international guys that teams are trying to sign, because there are some schools with a little bit of NIL money left, and one of the residuals of NIL is being able to bring over these guys that were playing internationally. And we did see one move over the weekend with Sinal Mihailo Petrovic. He was playing over for Serbia professionally for a few seasons last season over at Illinois. He just wasn't able to get out there on the floor. He was averaging 1.5 points and an assist per contest, and he only played in 19 games. But we are going to be seeing some of these teams just dabble in the international market, trying to be able to get a little bit of a spark out of these guys, and it's been mixed with regards to results. Like Illinois, this one was a little bit of a flop for them, but a big reason why he was not seeing a lot of minutes is because all the other international men of mystery, they were really panning out. Like, I mean, we had James Donji. He's one of the most famous international guys that did not pan out, but I mean, it's a little bit of a jury's out situation, and I do think that Sinal has done an okay job here in the offseason. They obviously don't have as many resources as a lot of these other teams in the Big East, but going to be interesting to see how they run things moving forward, because they were such a bad three-point shooting team last season, and now they brought in quite a few guys that should be able to bomb it from three. Rodney Brown, who was a nice three-point shooter over at Virginia Tech, along with Loyola Marymount. Roddy Anderson, he's going to be able to give a little bit of versatility to this offense. Kareem Thomas was amazing in the Ivy League from three-point range. Maybe they don't have as much rebounding down low. Pat Sumnick, I think, is going to be an interesting guy, and then you bring in Devin Williams, who's at 6'10". He's got quite a bit of size, and Abdul Fantakaba is a guy that I'm pretty excited for as well, 7-footer, but we have seen with this system under Sheen Alway, he's able to bring in some of these guys that are mid-majors that maybe weren't the world's greatest at their previous spot, and really be able to get the most out of them, especially with regards to big men. So I think that that's going to be good for them. But you do take a look at just this landscape right now, and we've got a lot of of just interesting hodgepodge pieces right now. Obviously, LSU is the most famous example of trying to bring in guys internationally, and some of these guys are probably not going to be eligible for the upcoming season, but I do think that it is worth noting because with some of these teams, Illinois obviously being the biggest example, they very much benefit from them. Arizona over the last few years, with the amount of international guys that they've been able to bring in, it's allowed them to become one of the better schools in all of college basketball, which makes it interesting to see what Arizona is able to get out of Maximum Bravic. Hopefully I got that correct. He's a guy that was from Montenegro. He's an 18-year-old that's able to bomb it from three at 6'10", and that's just something that you're typically not going to be able to find in the transfer portal. So he's a guy that's very much of intrigue right now, and I do think that with some of these guys, you're going to be able to get a little bit of, shall we say, diamonds in the rough, and you're going to be able to get a different skill set rather than what we are going to be able to find just out here in the States. And for some of these schools, they just need to get creative. Like South Carolina is a very good example of this. They're bringing in Matheus Vasquez. He was a guy that was over in Brazil at 6'9". He's able to give you some versatility. He's a guy that tore his ACL and he might be redshirting, but they've also brought in a few other guys to be able to help out as well. Like you also have Hugo Lopez, who's going to be coming over from the international ranks. Juan Fernandez is a guy that I think is going to be very intriguing as well. So there's a team that is really going the international route because they have to try to keep up with the Joneses out there in the SEC. They might not have quite the NIL budget of, say, Texas, of, say, in Oklahoma, insert your favorite schools here, but they do have something to offer, and that would be minutes, and that would be playing time, so that's going to be able to help them out quite a bit. And I know that we talked on this podcast with our good friend Robbie Lascelles a few weeks ago, and a guy that he's very bullish on, I think is going to be intriguing in the big man Luigi Swigo. He was originally in the NBA draft. He decided that he was going to commit to Villanova, a 7'4" big man who is a guy that is able to dominate down low, not a guy that's necessarily going to be bombing it from three-point range or anything like that, but that's going to be a good pickup for Villanova as well. And then you also had San Jose State a few weeks ago bring in Olivier Colme. Hopefully I got that correct. He was an Estonian point guard that was actually really good in like the Eurobasket B division, according to Jonathan Gavoni, who really knows about these international guys. And just trying to be able to break down some of these international players is intriguing because you try to get as much as you can from the tape, what have you, but there's just so many different levels as well. Like if you're playing for some of the highest Greek leagues out there in the world, some of these guys that come over from France, what have you, some of these guys are just absolutely amazing and they're playing at a very, very high level. And then when you get down to the B and C level, and like Belgium, for example, it's a very, very low level. So you might have a guy that's internationally only averaging like 2 or 3 points per game, but because he's playing at such a high level, he's a guy that people are going to be coveting. Meanwhile, I take a look at someone like a Pavali Nikolic, who comes over from Murray State. He was in the Andratic League or something like that. I knew he was averaging 15 points, 5 boards, impressive numbers, and he's going to be able to provide some really good versatility for Murray State moving forward, but those numbers are a little bit more hollow than if they were playing for, like I said, one of these great Greek leagues, what have you. So there's a lot of intrigue and there's a lot of nuance when it comes to taking a look at these international guys, because when it comes to a transfer that comes on over from just a power conference school or even a high school, there's a little bit more fanfare for one. Two, it's a little bit easier to be able to find tape on some of these guys, and especially when it's a Division I transfer, you know what they were able to do at a comparable level. Like, even though the SWAC is not on par with, say, a power conference level, you're able to know, okay, this is how big of a step down the SWAC is compared to a power conference level. Meanwhile, the comparison to, like, level B basketball and insert your favorite country here as compared to what you're going to be able to get out there in the Patriot League, for example, that's very, very difficult to do. So there's a lot that is going on with this, but it is a lot of fun to be able to take a look at, and we should be seeing some more international signings as there's 1 or 2 roster spots available for some of these teams, and that will wrap things up for this edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And if you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, do have 1 or 2 ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_D1. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter. So, as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And I am with you guys every single day on this podcast. we're up over 2,400 straight days without a missed podcast. So you know what you are getting there. And with regards to this offseason, we're going to continue to take a look at the news and notes that we get. It's starting to really wind down because the transfer portal is relatively cold, and that's why you're getting these conference previews. I think I'm already through 8. We're making really good time on these conference previews, so we're going to continue to roll those out. And once we get back in season, you're going to get picks and analysis on every single game, every single day. And here, before we get those games, I'm going to put in the work to make sure that it is the best college basketball season of all time. So I appreciate you tuning in today, and I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you so much.